Hey guys, what's up? Real quick, because I've re-recorded this intro like a few times now, and I got to a minute, and I said, well, that's too long, and then I re-recorded it to make it shorter, and it was 3 minutes by the time I was done talking. We're already at 10 seconds. I better hurry up. This is going to be build log part 2. We got the Manta case in. We got a couple parts, but we're still waiting on 2 different parts, which is going to be a power supply that's fully modular for the white cables that are going to be going inside. And I'm going to be going over price, cost, and we're going to be taking a look at a little bit I've done. Well, I'm already at 30 seconds, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it off here, do the intro video, and then we'll get started.
I know what you came here to do. Now bust it open, let me see you get loose. It's going down for real.
Hey guys, what's up? Real quick, we're going to be going over the tower we're going to be using, which is the NZXT Manta. It's a mini ITX tower that's a little larger than your typical ITX tower, but I'm excited about it. I pulled this thing out of the box and I said, wow, I'm really already enjoying it. I'm really excited about it. Now, if you've ever worked with NZXT products before, this is the most similar to probably the H440 or the NZXT Noctis 450. And perhaps even the S340 if you've ever built in the S340. The inside of this is very similar to that. It's got a nice basement shroud for cable management so that you can hide just all that extra crap, which if you've ever built in a mini ITX before, then you know you've got a lot of extra crap to kind of accommodate. So that being said, I'm pretty excited about it. It does have 2 SSD brackets right here that should and hopefully will be eventually support of NZXT Hue, which I've read problems about people being able to install NZXT Hue on it. So I went a different route with a more budget-friendly option for RGB lighting. It's not going to be as good as NZXT Hue, but it's also going to be about $40 cheaper, and without being just regular standard lights from China. Anyways, that being said, let's get into this and start taking a look at it for build log part 2. Build log part 3, I'm still waiting on some parts, including a power supply, the Supernova from EVGA. That should be here tomorrow, and I'll definitely try to get that all done, and we'll get it thrown together and hopefully start getting to be able to see what it's going to look like when it's finished, which I'll go over a cost what I spent to what you can spend as far as keeping your cost down. There's about a $670 difference is why I say that. If you have no budget, then you can spend way more than I did and come out way further ahead. However, without compromising the integrity of this build itself, you can spend about $670 less at market cost values before you find deals and rebates and all that good stuff, and have the same essential and essence of the build. Anyways, that being said, let's take a look at the hardware. We'll start putting some stuff in it. Hopefully it'll start coming together and looking good. And I recommend, if you really want to see an intensive, comprehensive review on the NZXT Manta tower, go over to Hardware Canucks and check out Dimitri's review on this tower, because he does a great job, shows a lot of great footage. And if this is something you've been on the border about, I think it's worth $140. But if you don't want to spend that much on an ITX tower, there's a great option out by Fantex as well, the P400 and P400S, S for silent, which he also does a review on if you want to check that out. And it's between $60 and $80. So if that's more friendly of a price for you for something that still looks good from a company like Fantex, a brand you can trust like NZXT, then definitely go check those out and maybe save yourself a few dollars there. But I'll be building in this, and that's what we're going to be looking at, and hopefully come out on top. So as long as none of my stuff is damaged and we can do this well, then we should be in good shape. So anyways, I keep getting off on tangents, but let's go get some of that hardware from the office, and we'll start putting it in here, and hopefully it'll start coming together and looking good. And then for build log part 3, we'll do all the benchmarks for Mark Firestrike, Unigen Heaven and Valley. We'll do IDA 64, we'll do CPU-Z, take a look at. We'll use MSI Afterburner to monitor it, and everything should be excellent, awesome, great, wonderful. So that being said, stay tuned for part 3. Get subscribed if you're not subscribed. Let's go put some hardware in this and start making it look good now. I'm excited. I hope you're excited too. So while there are many places to start, I usually start by taking the tower, opening up the panels, and then I'll put the backplate in. And the backplate, for some reason, I struggle with. I don't know why. I must just be retarded when it comes to backplates, but I always feel like I get one corner in and then I just somewhere lose it, kind of. So for whatever reason, it's like the hardest thing in the case for me is putting the freaking backplate in. Anyways, eventually here I'll get it, and we'll move on to the next thing, where we're kind of looking at just talking about making sure that your motherboard is securely fastened inside the tower. I can't stress that enough, and while I might do things differently than some people who pre-assemble outside of the tower, I've always built mine inside the tower. So I will just go ahead and mention that when it comes to putting like a water cooler on. Some people will recommend go ahead and putting that plate on outside of the tower, but I do not. Anyways, I can't stress enough how important it is to not leave screws off when it comes to putting your motherboard in. It's for grounding reasons and security reasons, because if you're pushing a GPU in and you only have like 2 or 3 screws holding in, like let's say a full-size ATX motherboard, you're putting a lot of flex and strain on that motherboard. On top of that, it's holding those components, and you could potentially put heavier components in there. It just causes stress, especially if you ship them. You want to make sure you have as much security in there as possible, and that's really all I'm doing, is just showing you that with most ITX motherboards, it just comes with 4 screws, and you just need to make sure that they're all in there just for the security and safety of the tower itself. So there's always one at the bottom left, top right, bottom right, and then top left. That's where your 4 screws are. Some cases come with a standoff in the middle that'll hold it, and you can see that I did paint the heat sinks white with ceramic engine block paint, and that's because ceramic engine block paint is heat dispersion paint, and that's important to know if you do that. So moving right along, I wanted to mention this too, if most of you don't know. This is a standoff key, and this comes in really handy if you ever screw up your standoffs in your case and it's kind of stripped or you're having a hard time getting it out. You essentially just take the standoff key, put it on top of the standoff, and use a screwdriver to either loosen it or tighten it to make sure that they're in there securely. So next, what I'm looking at here is kind of where did I want to put the radiator. The Kraken's a 240mm radiator, and I know that it's probably better to put it on top, but I didn't want to jumble up the aesthetics of the inside of the case with what I was planning to do. So ultimately, I'm going to decide to take out the 2 fans in the front and mount the radiator there, which kind of came across its own problems, and I'll kind of go over that here shortly as well. Now in the back of the case here, I've got a fan that I'm not going to be using. I'll be taking that out and putting my 120mm fan or radiator there, in which I'm mounting the GPU just below it. So that's kind of, it's going to be a front and back setup, so I don't really have airflow to come in because both my radiators are going to be blowing the hot air out. I don't do push-pull configurations. It does nil difference really when it comes down to cooling. At the bottom you have a mechanical hard drive mount, and this was neat and thoughtful of NZXT because, as you can see, there's holes right there in the feet so that you can get in there and secure it. But there is a downside to that I'll go over in a moment. Here are the SSD brackets that were supposed to be changed, and this was frustrating because from when I watched a review on this tower, I was under the understanding that it was going to be changed. As you can see here, I'm just demonstrating that I put it in right side up as most people would want to, but because of this, where the ports are, there is no support that comes out of that side of the case to kind of make that work. So you have to put the SSDs in upside down, which just for my OCD reasons bothered me a little bit, but that's not a huge deal. So I quickly got over it, and I even thought about taking the sticker off and putting my own sticker on there or some paint, some of that nature, which I may go back and do later, but for now that'll do fine. It's just a little meh. It has to be upside down. Such a flawless case for it to be upside down. Really nice fan filter in the front. I'm going to go ahead and remove that, and I'm going to take these 2 fans out. Now these are really nice fans, so I've essentially got 3 fans extra for later if I ever need them, but I'm going to use my own fans that I'm using for my radiators to kind of add to, once again, the pop and aesthetic of the case. So now this 240 that I'll be putting in the front sort of had an issue with the hard drive I just showed you at the bottom, and I'll kind of get to that here shortly. As you can see, I mounted it in there, but because of the size of the radiator and the fans, you kind of got to make it your own setup when it comes to mounting it in there. I had to use 2 really secure screws and washers, and that's not something I'd recommend usually, but those are the only things that are really holding it in there, and I made sure it was good and tight. I applied a lot of pressure and kind of messed with it, and I had to finagle it just right so that I could still close the top part of the case and have clearance on the hard drive down there. And in this video, it's actually a little higher than it actually is. Those fans pretty much sit on top of the hard drive at this point because I couldn't get the case to close. So here we are, and you'll notice the white cables in there. I'm going to talk about that in the next video because those white cables from CableMod are not compatible with the EVGA Supernova G2, which they had promised to be. I'm really disappointed with that. I pulled them out and threw them across the room, and I'm using black cables now. So unfortunately, we won't have my pretty white cables in there. And that was just kind of a sucky thing because they were nice and they popped and they matched the tower and they looked good, I thought. So that's unfortunate, but here we go. I've got the Kraken X61 installed with the front mounted radiator. I'm just going to pull those up and I'll eventually zip tie those to the top mounting brackets there. And it'll kind of get those out of the way so that the RAM will be exposed to do its pretty glow thing, which by the way is beautiful. The whole tower looked nice. It really came together. And down here is where I put the expansion port for the USB because I'm running a little more USB than the one that's provided on the tower itself. I also did notice there's no HD audio from my front audio jacks, which doesn't bother me. On the motherboard, I could not locate a place to plug that in, just something to keep in mind. And of course, when you put your thermal paste on the heatsink, this is kind of the pattern you want to do it, or a dot right in the middle, not too much, not too little. Anyways, let's move right along. So despite exactly what I actually had to work with by losing my white cables and being disappointed, I actually found out that the $17 Logisys Light was really awesome. Now this tower is assembled and this video was put out a little slowly, but stay tuned, get subscribed, because part 3 is going to be pretty awesome. The way that it came together and the way that it looks, I was really excited about, and there's some things I would definitely recommend for the aesthetic pop that it definitely has now. Just get subscribed so you can check it out in the third video, and the third one will be the final one where we'll go over all the benchmarks and how it performs and what it does. And I'll also put up price comparison and links to the parts that I would use and that I would recommend, even on the budget, to the more enthusiast end of it. But this is a budget enthusiast build, just to keep in mind. I'm not trying to build the best thing in the world for you. So if you came here looking for the absolute best thing that you can spend money on, this is not a $10,000 computer. This is around an $870 to $1,600 computer. Get subscribed, stay tuned, because video 3 is going to be pretty awesome.